tomorrow, the big opening ceremony. What are you learning about that?
Yeah, the big opening ceremony, Dan, this is really an unprecedented event. It's one that everyone is so highly anticipating. It's never been done before, where the middle of the city is turning into the opening ceremonies. There are going to be about 10,000 athletes floating on around 100 boats down the River Seine, going through the heart of Paris. Now, from a security standpoint, it's been called a nightmare, Diane. Just imagine this. You have all these high-profile athletes, many of them famous, on this river, hundreds of thousands of spectators surrounding them, a lot of tall buildings on either side of the river. French officials say they have it under control. The security measures are so tight heading into tomorrow's opening ceremonies. We've told there'll be snipers on rooftops. There's going to be Navy boats patrolling the Seine during the opening ceremonies. There's actually a no-fly zone happening over the city, diverting flights from one of Europe's busiest airports. So this is a full-scale security operation. But Diane, there's also a lot of excitement around these opening ceremonies. Again, this is unprecedented. We've never seen opening ceremonies outside of a stadium like this. And there's also this secrecy around them. So we know Team USA, they're going to be led by Coco Gauff and LeBron James. Some huge names are going to be decked out in their American gear, but there's still so much we don't know. Event organizers purposefully haven't told anyone who's actually performing at these opening ceremonies. But of course, there are lots of reports coming in. So we know that Celine Dion and Lady Gaga are in Paris. We don't know if they're performing together or not, but Diane, we're going to figure out together tomorrow.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you, the performances. What scoop are you getting? Because, you know, Celine Dion, it doesn't get any better than that, especially under the circumstances. Her big comeback since revealing her diagnosis. What a moment.
Yeah, it promises to be incredible no matter what happens, and I promise I will be there, I will be dancing, and I'll send you photos, Diane.
I hope you're twinning with me again, too, because we're matching today, Maggie.
Yeah. All right, you look so good.
Maggie, have the best time. I know you will. Thanks for checking in.
Thanks. See you, Dan.
And coming up here on ABC News Live, the new alert about dengue fever. Cases are being diagnosed at 5 times the rate of last year. Dr. Alok Patel is here with what to watch out for.
Whenever, wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed. Here in London, in Buffalo, Uvalde, Texas, Edinburgh, Scotland. Reporting from Rolling Fork, Mississippi. Ukrainian refugees here in Warsaw. We're heading to a small community outside of Mexico City. Getting you behind the stories as they happen. ABC News Live Prime. We'll take you there.
Stream ABC News Live weeknights wherever you stream your news. Only on ABC News Live. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
There is a price to be paid every time a survivor shares their story. I will not be silenced.
Do you feel the church accepted abuse?
I wouldn't say accepted it as so much pretended it didn't exist.
Yep, that's him.
Yep.
Ready? Kira Phillips with ABC News. Does your church protect sexual predators?
The powerful new Impact by Nightline. Secrets of the 2x2 Church.
There's nothing pretty about hearing this.
Now streaming on Hulu.
Why do so many people start their day here?
From ABC News, this is Start Here.
To be in the know and get a different take on the day's top stories. Start here.
Now, that's a part of the story I bet you didn't see coming.
Make it your daily first listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to ABC News Live. First, the World Health Organization is warning about a dramatic increase in dengue fever around the world. Nearly 2,900 Americans have been infected this year, nearly 5 times the rate of last year. I want to bring in ABC News medical contributor Dr. Alok Patel to break it all down for us. Dr. Patel, the CDC recently issued a warning on this. So walk us through this. Why is this happening, and how concerned do we have to be?
Dengue fever is a viral infection that's spread by mosquitoes. Now, a lot of people living in cities outside of tropic areas of the world probably haven't heard about it, but as we are seeing a warming, changing climate and there's more travel, cases are popping up. This is one big reason why public health officials feel that we are seeing more cases of dengue here domestically. Right now in 2024, there are about 10 million cases in the Americas, North America, Central, and South. And this is more than 200% more than we had at this time last year, all of last year, with about 5 million cases. So this is concerning. What people need to pay attention to is that it all comes down to knowing the signs and symptoms and preventing mosquito bites if you can.
So what are those signs and symptoms?
So not everyone who gets bitten by this mosquito is going to develop dengue fever. If you do, symptoms usually pop up about 2 weeks after a bite. They can include nausea, vomiting, aches, rashes, and the telltale muscular pain, which is so bad that it's actually been nicknamed break bone fever because people actually can feel like they've broken bones, such as their ribs. In a smaller subset of people who get infected, this can progress to severe disease that can include septic-like symptoms, shock, even bleeding, and can be life-threatening if you don't get to medical care. But again, this progression is rare.
So what are the treatment options, and how do you go about preventing this? You say preventing bites. Can you give some more specific tips?
If only we could avoid mosquito bites altogether. That's not the reality on planet Earth. But fortunately for people who develop dengue fever, treatment is going to mostly be supportive care at home, rest, hydration, taking Tylenol for pain, not ibuprofen or aspirin, because that can increase your risk of bleeding. And talking to a doctor, if you've been to a place where you may have been bitten, you might need to get some testing. And preventing mosquito bites really comes down to making sure you know where you're traveling, where you're living, especially around the Gulf states, or if you go to another tropical area. You want to use EPA-registered insect repellent that contains DEET or picaridin, or you can use permethrin-treated clothing and gear. And prevention, such as using mosquito nets and getting rid of any still bodies of water where mosquitoes can breed around your house or where you're staying, is also crucial as well. Dan, this is just a reminder that outbreaks of a tropical disease elsewhere can become infectious cases everywhere.
Got it. All right. ABC News medical contributor Dr. Alok Patel, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for streaming with us. I'm Diane Macedo. ABC News Live is here for you anytime with the latest news, context, and analysis. You can always find us on various streaming services, the ABC News app, and of course on abcnews.com. The news never stops. We'll be right back.
Whenever news breaks,
we are here in Israel, a nation at war.
In Rolling Fork, this tornado tore through this town.
From Lewiston, Maine.
The scene of a horrific mass shooting.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike.
ABC News Live everywhere.
In Iceland, let's go.
On the 2024 campaign trail.
Here at 10 Downing Street.
Wherever the story is.
We're going to take you there.
You're streaming
ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live, streaming free everywhere. What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
An operation to capture ISIS fighters.
Is this our Combat Operations Center?
We're approaching the gate now. Militants came in from 4 or 5 different directions.
Operational nuclear reactor.
So you have a couple loaded and ready to go. The house is destroyed, but the flag, there's not a tear in it.
Not a tear in it.
How important is this label right here, Made in the USA? Look at your smile. You're proud of this.
I love this.
Great work.
Hi.
Where are you? Where are you?
Appreciate you.
Thank you, David. Good to meet you.
Ismail? David.
David.
Yes, yes. I'm David Muir.
I know who you are.
You
I watch
do?
you every night.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
Hi, I'm Andy. And I'm Sabrina. And we're moms, juggling tons of stuff every day, like all you moms out there. And you know what we love? Really love? Pop culture. So what happens when being obsessed with pop culture collides with being a mom? You get us. So listen now to our new podcast, Pop Culture Moms, wherever you get your podcasts.
Reporting on the trial of Hunter Biden in Wilmington, Delaware, I'm Olivia Rubin. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. Today on ABC News Live First, Vice President Harris is set to speak any moment now after President Biden's historic address to the nation. Why he says he decided to drop out of the race for the White House and his plans for his last 6 months as president. Former President Trump is zeroing in on his new opponent, repeatedly mispronouncing the vice president's name. Why he says Kamala Harris is not fit to lead the nation in his first public appearance since President Biden left the race. Israel's prime minister is set to meet with President Biden and Vice President Harris today. How he hopes the U.S. will help with the war in Gaza. And the massive wildfire raging out of control in California. The evacuation's now underway and the urgent effort to get people to safety. But first, we were following developing news. A massive wildfire is prompting evacuations in Northern California. The park fire is burning near Chico, so far scorching more than 6,000 acres. Smoke from that fire and several others has also triggered air quality concerns. Let's bring in ABC's Jacqueline Lee live. Jacqueline, let's start with that wildfire in Northern California near Chico. What's the latest there?
Hey, Diane, so actually the numbers have grown significantly. So overnight, it was at more than 6,000 acres, but it has exploded to more than 45,000 acres. We cannot understate that enough of how quickly it grew. And it grew to more than 45,000 acres in less than 12 hours. And part of the reason for this is the topography. We're talking wind, explosive growth with timber, with brush, all of that acting as fuel for this fire. We know homes have burned based simply on video, with at least 1,500 people evacuated. And of course, we should remind everyone that this is near Chico. So this area has seen fires like this before. It's not far from the Camp Fire that killed 85 people in 2018. And Diane, as you know, we've been covering fires this year. We are seeing them burn here in California much earlier in the year than normal, and we have not seen a fire of this magnitude this year until now. So this is a pretty big deal, Diane.
And Jacqueline, talk about the air quality concerns. How bad is that? And are people walking around with respirators now?
That is what officials are recommending people to do, because you have to think about, as these fires continue to grow, we're seeing fires all over the place, including in Oregon, including in Canada. You want to be wearing those respirators because you never really know how bad it can be and how it's actually impacting your lungs. Something else that we've pointed out repeatedly is here in California, we have seen so much rainfall over the last few years, and as a result, you see a lot of vegetation growth. That now is fuel as these fires continue to burn. So something that started as small can explode overnight, which is what we saw today here with the park fire. So you're seeing the combination of weather conditions like the wind, low humidity, it just all of this together can create a massive fireball, which is what we're seeing. So of course, officials are, all hands on deck trying to get this fire under control. At the moment, it's only 3% contained, Diane.
All right, Jacqueline Lee, thank you. Vice President Kamala Harris is set to deliver remarks at any minute in Houston. She's set to speak at a conference for the American Federation of Teachers, which has already endorsed her as a Democratic presumptive nominee. It's happening as the House is voting on a resolution to condemn Harris over her handling of the border. ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang joins me now from Houston, along with ABC's Jay O'Brien on Capitol Hill for more. Jay, what's the latest on this House vote, and what are you hearing from lawmakers about it?
So remember, this resolution is part of a newer strategy from Republicans to try to take some political shots at Harris over policy issues, particularly the border, because she was labeled as the quote-unquote border czar by others. President Biden asked her to tackle the root causes of migration. That got labeled as the border czar. And now that she is the presumptive Democratic nominee, Republicans have put forward this resolution to condemn her handling of the border as the quote-unquote border czar. And the interesting dynamic here, Diane, is it looks like this resolution has just passed, if not, it is on track to pass, and it got 6 Democrats to vote for it, which is something that frankly weren't expecting. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries had condemned this resolution. He said it was a political shot at Harris. He told Democrats not to vote for it, and still 6 did. By our count, these are Democrats who are in frontline districts, which are meaning districts that are very competitive, who have a lot of Republicans or moderates in them. And again, 6 Democrats voting for this resolution to condemn the presumptive nominee of their own party, Diane.
Selena, how significant is that for the Harris campaign to now be facing this kind of condemnation from members of her own party in one of the top voting issues of this election cycle?
Yeah, well, Diana, as we were talking about earlier, Harris does have some unique challenges that she has to deal with because she is currently a vice president serving under President Biden, and she has to figure out where she should tie herself to the Biden administration and where she can create some distance and daylight. You heard Jay mention immigration there. That is a key vulnerability of the Biden presidency, and she has been inaccurately labeled by the GOP as the border czar, when in reality she was tasked with trying to figure out the root causes of immigration, which is, of course, a very, very tall order. The other area is the economy. Inflation, of course, has been moderating and slowing. The economic numbers are getting better, but a lot of Americans just are not feeling it, and many voters blame the Biden administration for the higher prices. So Vice President Kamala Harris has to meet people where they are and figure out how to really toe that line.
And Jay, that vote's now officially passed, we're hearing?
Yeah, it has officially passed. The final number was 220 to 196. And again, that is with those 6 Democrats, almost all of them frontline Democrats, meaning Democrats in competitive districts, voting for it. I can tell you, Diane, it was expected that this resolution would probably pass along party lines because this was obviously a Republican effort to condemn Harris and start to build this case of disagreement with her over policy. But I don't think anyone was really expecting 6 House Democrats, and that's a fair number just given how slim the numbers are here in the House of Representatives, to vote for a resolution that is condemning the presumptive nominee of their own party. One more thing to note here, which is we have seen some House Republicans in recent days start to take aim at Harris over her race. We've heard them use the phrase DEI hire and things of that nature. And one of the things we've learned, our Rachel Scott and I are reporting, that sources tell us that in a closed-door House Republican meeting earlier this week, Speaker Mike Johnson told them, focus on the policy, don't focus on personal attacks. And this resolution is in that vein, trying to focus on border policy.
So, Selena, how do you expect Harris to now defend against this? We have heard the campaign already talk about how she wasn't actually the border czar. But do you expect to hear more on what she actually did in her role in terms of immigration and the border? And what do you expect to hear from her at that event today?
Yeah, look, I think her campaign is driving home the message about the contrast here between her versus former President Donald Trump, and how she believes that she is the best person to hold Donald Trump to account. This is all about the framing of a prosecutor versus a convicted felon. So while she does have vulnerabilities in those areas we've been talking about, including immigration and the economy, they believe that because of who she is, she can drive out the voters that this campaign needs the most. Her campaign put out a memo just yesterday saying that a disproportionate number of these undecided voters are Black, Latino, and young voters. These are all groups that they believe Harris can drive out in droves. And I can just tell you here, Diane, I've been speaking to a lot of the teachers and public educators who are here today, and they say they feel a kind of energy and enthusiasm they haven't felt in months, including using the word hopeful.
All right, Selena Wang, Jay O'Brien, thank you both. And Jay, stick with us because I want to ask you more about an upcoming story. Meanwhile, reactions are pouring in after President Biden addressed the nation for the first time since bowing out of the race for the White House. In a rare Oval Office address, the president opened up about his decision to exit the race and pass the torch to the next generation of leaders, calling this the best way to unite our nation. President Obama reacted on Twitter, writing that the sacred cause of this country is larger than any one of us and that Joe Biden has stayed true to those words. ABC News White House correspondent Karen Travers joins me now for more on that. Karen, last night the president described the decision to bow out as a patriotic necessity to preserve the country. But he made no mention of why, didn't talk about his loss of support among party leaders, made no mention of concerns about his health or age. Why not? What do you make of that?
Diane, he really did not go into details about the decision-making process, the timeline of when he decided to withdraw from this race, the conversations that he had, maybe what tipped him over the edge on this one. And obviously, there's been a lot of political pressure on him over the last several weeks. Democratic Party leaders coming to him and saying that you just can't do this right now and that you will likely be a drag on Democratic candidates. None of that from the president last night. Instead, he talked about his love for this country and almost framing this like a patriotic duty to step down and to unite the Democratic Party. He never explicitly said, I am stepping out of this race because I don't think I can win. In fact, Diane, he said he believes that what he has done deserves 4 more years in office. He said his record as president, his leadership around the world, and his vision for America's future merits 4 more years. But there was an implicit acknowledgement that the political tide had turned against him. Diane, when he talked about uniting the country and uniting the Democratic Party had become ununited because they were against the president at this point, with dozens and dozens of lawmakers calling for him to get out of this race.
Now, Karen, when he ran in 2020, Biden cast himself as a bridge to the next generation of leaders. So how is he explaining not only why he chose to bow out now, but why he chose to run again to begin with?
He really did that in 2020, talking about himself as a bridge candidate, saying that there was a whole generation of future leaders lining up behind him, looking at his own presidency potentially as a transitional presidency. And then he announced he was running for re-election, and all of that was pushed aside. Last night, though, he said it was time to pass the torch to the next generation. He said that it was a time and place for long years of experience in public life like his, but there's also a time and place for new voices, fresh voices, and he said, yes, younger voices. And that time is right now. Now, Diane, I think there could be a lot of second guessing in November if things do not go the Democrats' way, that maybe the time for that passing of the torch was not July of 2024, but a year ago or longer before that, that the president maybe missed that opportunity. But for now, he was focused on trying to rally support for his vice president, talking about how strong and tough she is and saying Americans now have a big decision to make.
All right, White House correspondent Karen Travers. Thanks, Karen. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to meet with President Biden and Vice President Harris today. It'll be his first White House visit since 2020, and it comes after his fiery address to Congress yesterday, where he offered a forceful defense of Israel's conduct in Gaza. Let's bring in ABC's Jay O'Brien again on Capitol Hill and ABC's Matt Rivers in Tel Aviv for more. Jay, this White House meeting, it comes at a pivotal moment for all three, for Biden, for Harris, and for Netanyahu. So what are they hoping to achieve here?
Yeah, this is going to underscore some of the divisions, frankly, in the Democratic Party. Remember, we saw 100-plus House Democrats skip Netanyahu's address yesterday. 20-plus Senate Democrats do it as well, over disagreements with Netanyahu's handling over that war in Gaza. And that is something that both President Biden and Vice President Harris have to contend with, A, when they meet with Netanyahu, but B, and more largely over the entire remainder of the next few months prior to Election Day, both within their own party but also on the world stage. These disagreements they have with Netanyahu, also balancing the U.S.'s longstanding support for Israel and the voices in their own party that are calling on changes to U.S. policy as it relates to Israel. That is what they have to confront. And we already saw that somewhat on display just with how Netanyahu was received here on Capitol Hill yesterday, getting a rousing standing ovation several times from Republicans and a much more chilly reception from Democrats.
And Matt, what's the sentiment in Israel? Netanyahu says he's here to try to shore up U.S. support for the war in Gaza. How do people there feel about that?
Well, I think a lot of people here in Israel who are critics of Netanyahu would say, well, hasn't the U.S. already really been supporting Israel? Like, I think people are saying, you know, what is the intent here? What is the goal? President Biden has been a staunch supporter of Israel since the beginning, sure, with a couple of exceptions here and there, but he's largely provided Israel with everything that they've asked for. And sure, Netanyahu in his speech yesterday said we want more things faster, but Israel has long said that, and the U.S., for its part, has long answered that call. So I think a lot of critics are saying that even though Netanyahu's saying he needs to go there to shore up support, they're wondering if this is more of a self-interested trip on the part of Netanyahu, that he wanted to get those standing ovations that he saw yesterday, that he knew would come because Israel and the U.S. relationship, you know, is a talking point on both sides of the aisle for decades now. And I think a lot of the criticism that you're hearing for Netanyahu here in Israel is led by the families of the hostages that remain in Gaza, both those dead and alive still. They say there's still no ceasefire deal, that they wanted Netanyahu to go to the United States in furtherance of a deal, to announce a deal maybe, or to say something was about to be struck, and that's not what they've heard so far. So, look, he has a lot of support, Netanyahu, here in Israel, but I think overall there's a ton of criticism led by those hostage families.
And Jay, Netanyahu's also expected to meet with former President Trump tomorrow. What can we expect from that meeting?
Well, when you talk about division, you can see two people that are a little bit closer together. We've seen President Biden's relationship with Netanyahu fray in recent months, despite the fact that Netanyahu did praise President Biden yesterday for his longstanding commitment to Israel, particularly in the wake of the October 7th attack. We have seen divisions between those two. Meantime, Netanyahu had a lot of praise for former President Trump yesterday and his administration's approach to Israel, moving, for instance, the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and things of that nature. So you can expect them to be in much more lockstep, Trump and Netanyahu, when they ultimately meet at Mar-a-Lago. And the question then facing Netanyahu in both of these public meetings is, how does he characterize them? Does he characterize one as being far different than the other, or does he just say that they were about the same?
All right, Jay O'Brien on Capitol Hill, Matt Rivers in Tel Aviv. Thank you both. Coming up, a not guilty plea in connection with that tragic shooting at Robb Elementary School. Why a former Uvalde school police officer is heading to trial.
Whenever news breaks,
We are here in Israel, a nation at war after that brutal surprise attack by Hamas.
On the ground in Ukraine, reporting from Lewiston, Maine.
The scene of a horrific mass shooting.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey. In rolling forward, this tornado tore through this little town.
From the most devastating disaster in Hawaii.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
In Iceland, let's go.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
From the front lines, from southern Israel.
Outside the Gaza Strip.
In Beirut.
From the FBI.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is, we're going to take you there.
You're streaming.
ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live, streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
We're still in a flash flood warning.
To catch you up with what happened overnight. Police in riot gear arresting dozens of protesters.
What's happening today? Escalating tensions in the Middle East.
What people are talking about. The migrant crisis.
Fast, straightforward.
With some fun in between.
Check out the Gator on the 17th hole.
The buzzkill in baseball.
First thing in the morning.
America This Morning.
America's #1 early morning news.
On ABC News Live.
Why do so many people start their day here?
From ABC News, this is Start Here.
To be in the know and get a different take on the day's top stories.
A lot of news today, so let's get into it.
Listen now to the Daily News Podcast honored with 4 Edward R. Murrow Awards and see why the New York Times calls it a news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, ABC News. Make it your daily first listen.
Now, that's a part of the story I bet you didn't see coming.
Wherever you get your podcasts, Start Here.
Welcome back to ABC News Live. First, a former Uvalde Schools police officer has pleaded not guilty in the 2022 Robb Elementary School mass shooting. Adrian Gonzalez is charged with 29 counts of child endangerment for his role in the botched response to the massacre. He's one of nearly 400 law enforcement personnel at the scene who waited more than 70 minutes to confront the shooter. ABC's Maria Villarreal joins me now from Uvalde, Texas, with more. Maria, what's the latest from court?
You know, Diane, court wrapped up pretty quickly here in Uvalde County. Basically, we went inside. We were asked to give up all our electronic devices. Security was very tight as we walked in, and no devices were allowed inside the courtroom. The judge quickly made introductions and then moved on very quickly. Basically, he was asking Adrian Gonzalez if he knew exactly what he was being charged with. 29 counts of abandoning a child, endangering a child, and that has to do with the children who lost their lives, the 19 children, and then the additional 10 survivors. Mr. Gonzalez said he understood what the charges were, and then he entered a plea of not guilty. There was a lot of basic information discussions of who the attorneys were on both sides, and then the judge basically set a date of September 16th for the next hearing at this point, Diane.
Maria, Gonzalez's attorney calls the charges unprecedented in the state of Texas and says he did not violate school district policy or state law. How is the community reacting to this arraignment and the grounds on which he's being not completely singled out, because we know Arredondo is also facing charges, but singled out to some degree here?
You know, I will say there was mixed reaction today. So first of all, families were showing up way before 7 in the morning, before the courthouse was even open, to get inside the courtroom and make sure they were present for this hearing. As you mentioned, Arredondo was not here. He did waive his right or waive his reading of the charges today, and he did not show up. He entered a not guilty plea earlier this month, but Adrian chose to show up today. His attorneys tell me this was his choice of why he wanted to be here. Afterwards, we spoke with his attorneys, asked why that was, and he said, listen, our client fully believes, and we support him, that he is innocent in the situation, and he wants to stand here and explain why that is. While they didn't go so far as to say that their client is being singled out, they definitely felt that there were other officers that were on site that were involved in the decision-making process that could have obviously been a part of this indictment, but that aren't. So there are a lot of questions still circling around that, but it was very clear that Adrian wanted to be here, and for that matter, the families were respectful in though they did confront him, they did try to approach them. They also acknowledged the fact that he was here and actually decided to show up.
And Maria, as you mentioned, the former Uvalde Schools police chief, Pete Arredondo, waived his arraignment. He entered a not guilty plea on July 10th. So what's the latest on his case, and what's next for both him and Gonzalez?
You know, at this point, Gonzalez and his team are hoping to separate the two. They do feel like there were very different roles that both of these men played on that day. That being said, right now the cases are still connected for all intents and purposes of this particular trial so far. I would imagine that we will hear a lot more from both sides, including Arredondo's team, on September 16th. In between now and then, we can also expect a number of motions will be filed with the court. And there's also the possibility of changing venue. While that is something that the defense attorneys want in this case, ultimately it is a decision that will be made by the judge, and I imagine we will probably get to that discussion around that September timeframe.
All right, Maria Rivial in Uvalde, Texas. Thank you, Maria. Coming up, Southwest Airlines is breaking 50 years of tradition. How the airline is making some major changes.
What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
An operation to capture ISIS fighters.
Is this our Combat Operations Center?
We're approaching the gate now. Militants came in from 4 or 5 different directions.
Operational nuclear reactor.
So you have a couple loaded and ready to go. The house is destroyed, but the flag, there's not a tear in it.
Not a tear in it.
How important is this label right here, Made in the USA?
Look at your smile. You're proud of this.
I love this.
Great work.
Hi.
Where are you? Where are you?
Appreciate you.
Thank you, David. Good to meet you. Ismail? David.
David.
Yes, yes. I'm David Muir.
I know who you are.
You
I watch
do?
you every night.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
All right, let the dogs out, please.
I don't think he's going to give you a hard time.
Even if he gives me a hard time, I'm the right guy.
You can handle it.
I want to make sure that we all learn together.
Calm, confident.
Calm, confident, calm, surrender.
Everything that he's taught has become a reality.
Yeah.
We are so grateful and impressed.
I feel like crying.
You changed our world.
It is a beautiful thing to see. As you rehabilitate the dog, you also rehabilitate you.
Why do so many people start their day here?
From ABC News, this is Start Here.
To be in the know and get a different take on the day's top stories.
A lot of news today, so let's get into it.
Listen now to the Daily News Podcast honored with 4 Edward R. Murrow Awards and see why the New York Times calls it a news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, ABC News. Make it your daily first listen.
Now, that's a part of the story I bet you didn't see coming.
Wherever you get your podcasts, Start Here.
Reporting from Miami, Florida, I'm Victor Oquendo. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Well, Welcome back. Southwest is changing up its long-standing seating arrangements, and Inside Out 2 just hit a new high. ABC News business reporter Alexis Christophorus has more on that and your other business headlines. I saw it and loved it.
I still have to see it.
Highly recommend.
Yes, it's on my list. All right, let's start off with the economy because it continues to flex its muscle, growing a much stronger than expected 2.8% in the second quarter. That's according to the Commerce Department. Consumers continue to drive this economic growth, opening their wallets to spend big on both goods and services. Business investment was also strong as companies spent more on equipment. Some economists say today's report more proof that the economy has avoided a recession while getting inflation closer to the Fed's 2% target. On Wall Street, meantime, stocks trying to bounce back after yesterday's big sell-off. Disappointing earnings from tech heavyweights, including Tesla and Google's Alphabet, led the Nasdaq and S&P 500 to their biggest one-day drop in 2 years. Some analysts say investors may also be cashing in some profits here after an incredible run-up for stocks since the beginning of the year, driven mostly by companies dealing with artificial intelligence. We'll say goodbye to open seating at Southwest Airlines. The low-cost carrier says it is moving to assigned seats for the first time in its 50-year history. Southwest says it's making the change to give customers what they've been asking for, but of course that change also allows Southwest to charge a premium for some seats. Southwest will also start offering overnight red-eye flights for the very first time. Now, it didn't offer an exact timeline here, but the carrier says those changes will take effect sometime next year. And if there is one emotion that ABC's parent company Disney and Pixar are feeling right now, it has got to be pure joy, because the movie sequel Inside Out 2 is now the highest-grossing animated film of all time, raking in nearly $1.5 billion at the global box office and unseating the former record holder Frozen 2, also a Disney film. It's, of course, welcome news for Hollywood, which is still trying to recover from the effects of last year's writers and actors strike. And I love that Amy Poehler is back for this one, too.
It's a great one. Alexis, thank you. Sure. And if you have any finance questions for Alexis, leave a message on our Instagram feed at ABC News Live, and she might answer your question right here on Thursday. And today is National Intern Day, so we want to give a huge shout out to a hero around here, our incredible ABC News Live Dayside Summer intern, Carolina Jedrowski. Not only does she run scripts, she helps our social team on a daily basis. She also played an integral role in producing some of our social media coverage and fun franchise segments like Macedo Methods and The Right Stuff. We could not be more proud of Carolina, so Carolina, thank you for all you do. And thank you for streaming with us. I'm Diane Macedo. ABC News Live is here for you anytime with the latest news, context, and analysis. You can always find us on various streaming services, the ABC News app, and of course on abcnews.com. The news never stops. We'll be right back.
Wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed. Here in London, in Buffalo, Uvalde, Texas, Edinburgh, Scotland. Reporting from Rolling Fork, Mississippi. Ukrainian refugees here in Warsaw. We're heading to a small community outside of Mexico City. Getting you behind the stories as they happen. ABC News Live Prime. We'll take you there.
Stream ABC News Live weeknights wherever you stream your news, only on ABC News Live. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television. Why do so many people start their day here?
From ABC News, this is Start Here.
To be in the know and get a different take on the day's top stories. Start here.
Now, that's a part of the story I bet you didn't see coming.
Make it your daily first listen wherever you get your podcasts.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
We're still in a flash flood warning. To catch you up with what happened overnight. Police in riot gear arresting dozens of protesters.
What's happening today? Escalating tensions in the Middle East.
What people are talking about. The migrant crisis.
Fast, straightforward.
With some fun in between.
Check out the Gator on the 17th hole.
The buzzkill in baseball.
First thing in the morning.
America This Morning.
America's #1 early morning news.
On ABC News Live.
Here's to good mornings in America.
Can you feel the love? Oh, yeah.
Mornings that inspire, filled with hope, kindness, joyous surprises, and so much fun.
This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy.
Start your day with Good Morning America's Ray of Sunshine, highlighting the best of America and helping
Make dreams come true.
her as the Democratic presumptive nominee. Let's listen.
Good morning, AFT. Good morning. Oh, my goodness, it's so good to be with everybody. Please have a seat. Please have a seat. If you have a seat, please have a seat. It is good to be in the House of Labor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My goodness. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you all. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Can we hear it for Brittany, please? Oh, thank you all. It's so wonderful to be back with everyone here. Thank you. That means so much more than I can say. Randy, thank you for your friendship, your long-standing friendship. As we all know, Randy is a force, and she has been an incredible friend and an advisor to the president and me. And I want to thank you on behalf of the president and me and our country for all that you are. And I want to begin by saying a few words about our President Joe Biden. You know, right? Yeah. So last night, our president addressed the nation, and he showed once again what true leadership looks like. He really did. His words were poignant. You know, I'll speak in a moment about the importance of reminding people of history, teaching America's true history. He thinks and talks about his work and our country, understanding what it means in terms of what we do now and how that will impact the future. He thinks about our history in the context of the importance of the work we do now. And over the past 3.5 years, and over his entire career, Joe has led with grace and strength and bold vision and deep compassion. And as he said, that's right. And as he said, in the next 6 months, he will continue to fight for the American people. And I know we are all deeply, deeply grateful for his continued service to our nation. Thank you. Thank you. And to the members of AFT, I thank you for your service to our nation. From the public service workers and higher education faculty to the school bus drivers and the custodians, to the school nurses and our teachers, you all do God's work educating our children, the whole ecosystem of who are AFT members. It is you who have taken on the most noble of work, which is to concern yourself with the well-being of the children of America. And I thank you for that. I thank you for that. And I thank you also for your support over the years and for being the first union to endorse me this week. Thank you. I thank you. I thank you. And as you may know, I am a proud product of public education. Many of you know that my first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, taught me and educated me and encouraged me and inspired me. And years later, when I walked across the stage to receive my law school diploma, Mrs. Frances Wilson was in the audience. Yeah. Yeah. And that's who you are. I know who you are. I know who you are. This work is personal, and it is professional, and it is so critically important. And so it is because of Mrs. Wilson and so many teachers like her that I stand before you as Vice President of the United States of America. And that I am running to become President of the United States of America. And what I know firsthand is that our teachers and all those who are here, all the members of AFT, I know that by nature, you are visionaries. You are focused on the future. The work you do is about a focus on the future. You see the potential in every child. You foster it, you encourage it, and in so doing, you shape the future of our nation, which is why I say we need you so desperately right now. Today, we face a choice between two very different visions for our nation. One focused on the future, and the other focused on the past. And we are fighting for the future. And in our vision of the future, we see a place where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. A future where no child has to grow up in poverty, where every senior can retire with dignity, and where every worker has the freedom to join a union. We see a future with affordable health care, affordable child care, and paid leave, not for some, but for all. We see a future where every student has the support and the resources they need to thrive, and a future where no teacher has to struggle with the burden of student loan debt. So as an example, our administration has forgiven student loan debt for nearly 5 million Americans, and twice as much for our public servants, including our teachers. Teachers like Tanya Cabeza, who I met recently in Philadelphia. Tanya was first in her family to go to college, and she had been, like many, paying off her student loans for 20 years. And she told me, she was like, look, I at many times wondered, would I have to leave this profession I love to just be able to pay my bills? But I did it, but I didn't leave because I love what I do and I understand the importance. But making decisions then about what she could afford in terms of her daily obligations and dealing with these loans. And after 20 years, she still owed $40,000 in student loans. And we forgave it all. When she learned, she told me, she said, when she learned that her loans had been forgiven, she said, well, me and my children knew our lives had changed, and we were just dancing. So there we go. But we are clear-eyed. As we work to build a brighter future and to move our nation forward, there are those who are really trying to take us backward. And you, I'm sure, have seen their agenda. Project 2025. Andy, can you believe they put that thing in writing? 900 pages in writing. So Project 2025 is a plan to return America to a dark past. Donald Trump and his extreme allies want to take our nation back to failed trickle-down economic policies, back to union busting, back to tax breaks for billionaires. Donald Trump and his allies want to cut Medicare and Social Security, to stop student loan forgiveness for teachers and other public servants. And I say to AFT, they even want to eliminate the Department of Education and end Head Start, which of course would take away preschool from hundreds of thousands of our children. He intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations and make working families foot the bill. And he intends to end the Affordable Care Act. Now think about that, to take us back to a time when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. Remember what that was like? Children with asthma, women who survived breast cancer, grandparents with diabetes. You know, America has tried these failed economic policies before, but we are not going back. We are not going back. No, we will move forward. And one of the best ways to keep our nation moving forward is to give workers a voice, to protect the freedom to organize, to defend the freedom to collectively bargain, to end union busting. As head of the White House Labor Task Force, I have led our work to eliminate barriers to organizing in both public and private sectors, including for teachers. But there is more that we must do. President Joe Biden and I promised to sign the PRO Act into law, and I promise you I will keep that promise. Because when workers join together and demand what is fair, everyone is better off. Understand, and I say this everywhere I go, understand, you may not be a union member, but you should thank unions, and I'm looking to the cameras in the back of the room, not them, but the people who might be watching. You may not be a union member, but thank unions for the 5-day work week, for the 8-hour workday. Thank unions for sick leave and paid family leave and vacation time. Because the fact is, unions helped build America's middle class. And when unions are strong, America is strong. So AFT, ours is a fight for the future, and ours is a fight for freedom. In this moment across our nation, we witness a full-on attack on hard-won, hard-fought freedoms. While you teach students about democracy and representative government, extremists attack the sacred freedom to vote. While you try to create safe and welcoming places where our children can learn, extremists attack our freedom to live safe from gun violence. They have the nerve to tell teachers to strap on a gun in the classroom, while they refuse to pass common sense gun safety laws. And while you teach students about our nation's past, these extremists attack the freedom to learn and acknowledge our nation's true and full history, including book bans. Book bans in this year of our Lord 2024. And on these last two issues, just think about it. So we want to ban assault weapons, and they want to ban books. Can you imagine? All the while, these extremists also attack the freedom to love who you love openly and with pride. They passed so-called don't say gay laws. Now I have to tell you, so many of you may know, in 2004, on Valentine's Day weekend, I was one of the first elected officials in the country to perform same-sex marriages. So here's the thing. It pains me so to think 20 years later that there are some young teachers in their 20s who are afraid to put up a photograph of themselves and their partner for fear they could lose their job. And what is their job? The most noble of work, teaching other people's children. And God knows we don't pay you enough as it is. In this moment, we are in a fight for our most fundamental freedoms. And to this room of leaders, I say, bring it on. Bring it on. Bring it on. Here's the thing. We believe in our country. We believe in its promise of freedom. And the American people believe in the promise of freedom. So we are in the fight. We who believe in the freedom to vote will pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. We who believe in the freedom to live safe from gun violence will pass an assault weapons ban. We who believe that every American should be free from bigotry and hate will fight to protect our teachers and our students from discrimination and make sure every student can learn America's history. And we who believe in reproductive freedom will restore the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government telling her what to do. So AFT, that's right, bring it on. So ultimately, in this moment, I know we all know, we each in our country face a question. That question being, what kind of country do we want to live in? A country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law, or a country of chaos, fear, and hate. The beauty of our democracy is that we each have the power to answer that question. When we vote. And when we vote, we make our voices heard. So today I ask you, AFT, are you ready to make your voices heard? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris speaking at a conference for the American Federation of Teachers. Harris started by praising President Biden, saying, "We are all deeply grateful for his service to the nation." She then thanked the AFT for its service to the nation, saying educators do, quote, "the most noble of work." And she then thanked the union for its endorsement. ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang joins me now from that event in Houston. Selena, this isn't a campaign event, but it sounded like one at times, with Harris laying out her goals for this country and painting a contrast between herself and former President Trump and his allies, saying they want to move this country backward while she wants to move the country forward. What was the reaction like in the room to her message today?
Yeah, Diane, I mean, it very much felt like a campaign rally. That was the kind of excitement and energy you felt in this room multiple times, the crowd bursting into cheers, standing up, waving their signs. And even before she took the stage, for several minutes, people were chanting Kamala Harris. And in speaking to folks here before she took the stage, people said they were electrified in a way they hadn't felt in months, that they finally felt hope. And up on that stage, Diane, you really saw the vice president sharpen her message and hone in her message on how in the coming months ahead she's going to go directly after not just Donald Trump, but the policies of the allies that surround him. You heard her very much articulate Project 2025 and why she believes Donald Trump would take America down a darker path that would be taking America into the past, and why she believes she would take America into the future. Now, there were some lines there you heard recycled from President Biden's campaign stumps, her message about unions and how unions built the middle class and why she is backing unions. But you also heard her have this message of economic populism that President Biden sometimes struggled to articulate.
Now, Selena, the House just voted to condemn Harris over her border policies, including 6 Democrats. So how significant is it that 6 lawmakers from her own party just voted to condemn their presumptive nominee on one of the top voting issues in this election?
Yeah, look, immigration is a huge vulnerability for the Democratic Party and for Vice President Kamala Harris, because she is still serving as vice president under President Biden. And this was a huge area where voters were frustrated at the Biden administration, feeling like they weren't doing enough to stop the chaos at the border. Now, GOP attacks have incorrectly labeled her as the border czar. That's not the case. She was tasked to try and figure out the root causes of immigration, which of course is a very, very tall order. So she has a challenge of trying to find daylight between her and the president in some areas and trying to make the case of what the administration has done when it comes to immigration and the border and what she wants to do moving forward.
All right, Selena Wang in Houston. Selena, thank you. We'll be right back with more of the day's top stories. Stay with us.
What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
We are part of an operation.
Is this our combat operations center?
We're approaching the gate. Militants came in from different directions. Nuclear reactor. So you have a couple loaded and ready to go. The house is destroyed, but the flag...
Not a carry in it.
How important it made the USA. Great work.
Hi, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Ismail, David.
I'm David Muir.
I know who you are.
You
Watch
do?
you every night.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
If you were coming of age in the 1980s, the Brat Pack was near the center of your cultural awareness. But for those of us experiencing it from the inside, the Brat Pack was something very different.
The critics agree.
Hated the Brat Pack. What a
disaster.
Why did we take it as an offense?
Andrew? I'm not going to say we were the Beatles or anything.
Well, we didn't fill Shea Stadium.
1985? I think we could have.
Why do so many people start their day here?
From ABC News, this is Start Here.
To be in the know and get a different take on the day's top stories.
A lot of news today, so let's get into it.
Listen now to the Daily News Podcast honored with 4 Edward R. Murrow Awards and see why the New York Times calls it a news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, ABC News. Make it your daily first listen.
Now, that's a part of the story I bet you didn't see coming.
Wherever you get your podcasts, start here.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families.
On the ground in Ukraine.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news. Reporting from Burlington, Vermont, right in the heart of the path of totality. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.